Hello and welcome. I'm Leigh-Ann Gerrans and you're watching W News, broadcasting live from the Al Arabiya studios. These are our top stories. Trump lashes out at the UN General Assembly, claiming he ended 7 wars while questioning its role in world affairs. Meanwhile, Saudi Arabia and Pakistan strike a historic defense deal, with Pakistan hinting its nuclear arsenal could extend to Riyadh. And Trump slams Europe for buying Russian energy and warns the US may hit Russia with new tariffs. Before we start our show with that news on the UN General Assembly, we're just going to take a look at some of the other stories which are making headlines around the world today. At least 25 miners are trapped underground after a gold mine collapsed in Colombia. Authorities say rescuers are trying to reach them, and contact has indeed been made with those miners. A police officer in Australia has been charged with assaulting a protester at a pro-Palestinian demonstration. The victim, Hannah Thomas, says she was punched in the face during a June protest and needed surgery to treat her injuries. The officer will appear in court in November. A man has been accused of pointing a laser at a helicopter carrying President Donald Trump. 33-year-old Jacob Winkler was arrested on federal charges. The crime carries a maximum 5-year prison sentence. And President Donald Trump has made a link between the pain relief medicine Tylenol and autism. The US president made the announcement alongside his health secretary, Robert Kennedy Jr. Doctors will now be advised against prescribing Tylenol, which is also known as paracetamol, to pregnant women. Experts have pushed back on this claim. American comedian Jimmy Kimmel will return to his late-night show today after a brief suspension. The show was abruptly taken off air after he made comments regarding the death of conservative activist Charlie Kirk. President Donald Trump had welcomed the suspension, and affiliate outlets said they would replace the program across regional stations. Now back to our top story. President Trump has criticized the United Nations at the General Assembly, questioning its role in the world affairs and saying it failed to help during conflicts he claims to have ended. He listed 7 wars he said he solved and mocked the UN facilities, including a broken escalator and teleprompter. Trump also questioned the purpose of the UN. Take a quick listen to what he had to say.
What is the purpose of the United Nations? The UN has such tremendous potential. I've always said it. It has such tremendous potential, but it's not even coming close to living up to that potential. For the most part, at least for now, all they seem to do is write a really strongly worded letter and then never follow that letter up. It's empty words, and empty words don't solve war. The only thing that solves war and wars is action.
For more on this, I'm joined from New York by our correspondent, Tony Waterman. Tony, thank you so much for joining us. So Donald Trump delivered a lengthy attack on the UN effectiveness. He spoke for roughly 55 minutes. What did the US president have to say?
Well, this was one of President Trump's most anti-globalist, anti-America First policy, Trump First policy speech that we have seen him give during his entire political career. He really laid out this vision of a world that centers around isolationism and nationalism, at one point even saying that people or countries that allow in individuals that they have nothing in common with are facing ruin. And this is really the absolute antithesis of the United Nations, which really believes that even if countries are at odds, that they should work together to solve the world's biggest issues and to secure peace. At one point, as you mentioned there, Trump even questioned the very existence of the United Nations. The institution has for years now faced this question about its relevance, particularly right now as it celebrates its 80th anniversary in a war that is just in a world rather that has multiple wars playing out: Russia and Ukraine, Israel and Gaza. And Trump talked about these wars that are taking place, and he really condemned these countries, these Western powers that on Sunday and Monday recognized a Palestinian state for the first time. This includes a number of U.S. allies like Britain, Canada, Australia, and France. And he said that those countries are rewarding Hamas, a terrorist organization. He also focused the speech a lot on immigration and green energy, and he linked them together, saying that they are destroying the free world. He said that green energy is the biggest con job in history, and he went on at length about this. And of course, President Trump, under his leadership, pulled the United States out of the Paris Climate Accord. So his speech was stuff that we have heard repeatedly before. He praised himself a lot, praised his accomplishments a lot. And it also was this major attack on the fundamentals of the UN. And before he spoke, the United Nations General Secretary, Antonio Guterres, said that the institution's principles are under attack. And he didn't name Trump personally, but Trump speaking to those very concerns of just not the UN, but many of its member states.
Tony Waterman, thank you so much for joining us. Now, Trump also spoke about the conflict in Gaza, urging an immediate ceasefire. He criticised Hamas for rejecting what he called reasonable peace offers and warned that recognising a Palestinian state would be a reward for the terrorist group. Here's more of what he had to say.
As everyone knows, I have also been deeply engaged in seeking a ceasefire in Gaza. Have to get that done. Have to get it done. Unfortunately, Hamas has repeatedly rejected reasonable offers to make peace. We can't forget October 7th, can we? Now, as if to encourage continued conflict, some of this body is seeking to unilaterally recognize a Palestinian state. The rewards would be too great for Hamas terrorists for their atrocities. This would be a reward for these horrible atrocities. We have to stop the war in Gaza immediately. We have to stop it. We have to get it done. We have to negotiate, immediately have to negotiate peace. We got to get the hostages back. We want all 20 back. We don't want 2 and 4. We want the actually 38 dead bodies back too. Those parents came to me and they want them back, and they want them back very quickly and very badly.
For more on this, I'm joined by Riyadh Kawaji, Al Arabiya's geopolitical security analyst. Riyadh, thank you for joining us. We just heard there from Donald Trump, who said we have to stop the Gaza war immediately and get all 20 hostages back now. What did you make of the words, and was there anything new from the president?
Well, actually, it was not entirely accurate because the last offer made by Steve Witkoff, I mean, he is the mediator, Hamas accepted, agreed to. It was Netanyahu that decided to go back on this and change the terms, and which is something that had occurred repeatedly. And now it seems that President Trump is going along with the latest stance of the Israeli government, which is that they want the whole hostages released immediately or nothing. That's the only deal they would accept. So right now, President Trump is trying to show that he is, as he mentioned in his speech, that he ended the wars, and he is now trying to end more wars. He just, addressing the Gaza issue, which has become a very troubling issue affecting U.S. relations in the region. We saw what happened in the last Israeli air raid on Doha. We saw the deterioration of the U.S. reliability in the region to its partners because of its war. And now we're seeing, the Abrahamic Accords now are in jeopardy because of this war and of the Israeli government policy. So I think he is setting the stage for a meeting that reportedly he is planning to have with a number of Arab leaders on the sideline of the New York meetings to propose his own plan for Gaza, which we are yet to hear what it is.
And Riyadh, do Arab nations like the UAE have any leverage over President Donald Trump when it comes to putting pressure on Israel? You mentioned the Abraham Accords there. We know this is something that Donald Trump brokered, and it's very important to him.
Well, unfortunately, we have seen Donald Trump very weak when it comes to dealing with Israel and with Netanyahu directly. And that's one of the main reasons why we see the U.S. credibility in the region is under question. There's a lot that is on the line today, facing the possibility of collapse because of the Israeli policies and because of the U.S. failure to deal with these policies and to seriously pressure Israel into adhering to moderation, to some brokered agreements, not even to the U.S. Mediators. We've seen them pull out and not return because that they have been unsuccessful and getting Israel to commit to a line. Every time they come out with a proposal and they wait for a while, and then when Hamas says yes, then we have a whole new set of demands. So we have this situation today. We've heard all the speeches from the Arab leaders. They are not in line with President Trump's speech when it comes to Gaza.
And how concerning is that for the relationship that's been built up between the Arab leaders and Donald Trump? It was just recently we saw him in Saudi Arabia and obviously brokered all these deals. There was big money involved. What consequences could this have for the U.S.?
Well, yeah, this depends on what policies the Arab leaders are going to pursue, from this moment onward. We have this meeting coming up with President Trump about to hear his proposal to ending the war in Gaza. We don't know what is going to be in there, but right now we've had a whole day of country after another country from the West recognizing the Palestinian state. And still, Trump found this to be a reward to Hamas, although everybody said this was the right thing to do. This was the right thing to do to the Palestinian people, and nobody was concerned about Hamas, and nobody wants to see Hamas in the future of a Palestinian state. But still, we have President Trump's adhering to the line adopted by Israel. So the future of the U.S.-Arab relations today are very much hinging on how the Gaza war is going to come to an end, and when it's going to come to an end, and under what terms.
And you mentioned there that many countries have recognized a Palestinian state. It's been recognized by over 157 UN member states, Riyadh. Do you think Trump is becoming increasingly isolated from its allies on the issue of Israel?
Well, by linking the U.S. stance to Israel, he is becoming isolated alongside Israel. I mean, this is something that's not good for the U.S. This is the leader of the the Western democracy to be in such a position. You have major Western powers like France, UK, Spain recognizing the Palestinian state. Right now, the U.S. is more and more finding itself among the minority side of the world when it comes to the Palestinian question.
Riyad Kawaji, it's always great to have your analysis. Thank you for joining me. Now, Saudi Arabia and Pakistan have signed a landmark strategic defence agreement during Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif's visit to Riyadh. The agreement states that an attack on one nation would be considered an attack on both, deepening decades of military ties. Pakistan's defence minister went further, saying the country's nuclear capabilities could be made available to Saudi Arabia, a first public acknowledgement of such a commitment. For more on this, I'm joined from Islamabad by Asif Durrani, former Pakistani ambassador to the UAE and also Iran. It's a pleasure to have you on the show. Thank you so much for joining us and taking your time this evening. Can we just start with...
Thank you for having me.
Absolute pleasure. Can we just start with President Donald Trump? We were just talking there to my first guest, Riyad, about his address at the UN General Assembly, and he's also meeting a selected group of leaders from Muslim countries, including Pakistan's Prime Minister, on the sidelines of this General Assembly today. The talks are expected to focus on measures to end the ongoing conflict in Gaza. What does Pakistan want to hear from the US President Donald Trump today?
I think Pakistan is not alone in expressing the sentiments of the overwhelming majority of the Muslim world and even the civilized world about the right of Palestinians to self-determination. And that has been denied since 1948. Now there are some positive signs which are emerging, including some European countries, including Canada, France, UK. They have recognized Palestine as a state. So these are positive signs, and this should also serve as a call for recognizing the severity of the problem. And Israel and the United States should also realize that they have a responsibility towards peace and allowing Palestinians to live like other people. Yes.
Thank you so much. Now let's turn our focus to the Pakistan-Saudi Arabia Defence Pact. To what extent is this a significant game changer in the Middle East? And is the timing of this important?
Well, I haven't seen the text of the agreement between Pakistan and Saudi Arabia, but the joint statement is quite clear. And the important sentence is that attack on one country would be considered attack on both. So this is very important. So, and here we are talking about the threat to the security of the signatories. So here, I think it's a forward moment. Already, Pakistan and Saudi Arabia have had a close defense relationship, and Pakistan's troops have been stationed in Saudi Arabia since early 80s when Iraq was taking place. Then subsequently, when Iraq attacked Kuwait, Pakistani troops were there to defend Saudi Arabia. And our troops remained there since, including, and even now, we still have close to 2,000 troops from Pakistan. Yes.
And we know Pakistan is a nuclear power, and Pakistan's defense minister says the country's nuclear capabilities will be made available to Saudi Arabia. How exactly will this work?
I think a defense minister, I don't know in what context he said it, but nuclear is a very serious affair. And in Pakistan's case, it is India-specific. So there are no doubts about it. And Pakistan's nuclear program is full spectrum deterrence against any onslaught from the Indian side. But you have seen that in May, India and Pakistan had a 4-day war in which Pakistan displayed its prowess in the conventional field. And so therefore, this should serve as a pointer to those who think that Pakistan perhaps may lower the nuclear threshold. This is not the case, which is why that Pakistan has also established the missile theater and which is meant to raise the threshold of conventional warfare. And this present agreement with Saudi Arabia should be seen in that light.
And according to sources, and you also said this to me a little bit earlier, the agreement says that foreign aggression on one is attack on both. Many people have actually found this a surprising step. Why is this so? Is it because it involves the nuclear side of things?
I don't think so. It is I think our conventional capabilities are quite enough to deter any aggression. Pakistan has also displayed its capabilities against any aggression. So here I think even the norms of war are getting changed by the day. And it's no more a direct fight or tank-to-tank fight or artillery-to-artillery fight. So here I think it is, you can say, multi-domain, but mostly in the air. So those are the regions where Pakistan has excelled. So I think, and then Saudi Arabia does not entertain those in their strategic calculus about the nuclear armament. And then Saudi Arabia is also part of the demand that to make Middle East a nuclear weapon-free zone. And this is a demand still being tabled in the UN General Assembly. Israel is the only country which opposes that. So therefore, right now, Saudi and Pakistani agreement, when we say attack on one country would tantamount to attack on both, that means from the conventional point of view.
And one final question to you, if I may. Pakistan has nominated President Donald Trump for the Nobel Peace Prize. Why is this? And do you think President Donald Trump should win the prize?
Well, Pakistan has made a decision, but India are fighting shy. So it was a reward because President Trump did play a role in ending hostilities between India and Pakistan. India denies that. They are in a denial, so I'm not surprised. But I think, yes, President Trump did take a positive step, and he did mention about ending this war between India and Pakistan almost 30 times, much to the chagrin of Indians. But that's a reality, yes.
Former Ambassador Asif Durrani, thank you so much for joining the show. Now, the Taliban has firmly rejected President Trump's suggestion that the US could retake Bagram Air Base in Afghanistan. Trump has argued the base is strategically important, citing its proximity to China. Though experts do question the claim, Bagram was handed to Afghan forces before the Taliban takeover. In an exclusive interview, Taliban spokesperson Zabiullah Mujahid spoke with us. Here's what he had to say.
Now, last week in London, the US President Donald Trump said he was working to get back the Bagram Air Base in Afghanistan, adding, we're trying to get back Bagram because they need things from us. What things was he referring to, do you think? And what exactly do you want from Washington?
باید یک دو موضوعات را با هم تفکیک کنیم. There are two issues here which we need to separate. First, Afghanistan does indeed need good relations, foreign investment, including from the US, and a trustworthy diplomatic environment, where both countries can interact based on their national interests. Second, regarding Bagram, Bagram is part of Afghanistan's territory. It is no different from any other piece of Afghan land. We will never agree to bargain away or hand over any part of our country. Afghans are extremely sensitive about occupation, and no Afghan will ever allow their land to be taken or controlled by outsiders, not even an inch. The Americans must understand this sensitivity. Our people will not accept foreign troops exercising authority over any part of Afghanistan. We heard Trump's remarks and we responded. We issued a statement urging them to consider the reality on the ground and make realistic, rational decisions.
Now, do you interpret President Trump's comments about linking the return of Bagram to your demands as a signal that perhaps he may be willing to open a new chapter with your country?
The matter of our demands is a separate issue. Afghanistan does not and will never put forward any demands that involve relinquishing part of its territory in return. No such request has been made from our side, nor is there any need for it.
Tune in the next hour right here on Al Arabiya English to watch that full exclusive interview done by my colleague Tom Burgess-Watson. Now back to the UN General Assembly, where US President Donald Trump addressed global affairs, including the Russia-Ukraine war. He criticized NATO countries for continuing to buy Russian energy, calling it embarrassing and saying they are funding the war against themselves. Here is more on what he had to say.
And Europe has to step it up. They can't be doing what they're doing. They're buying oil and gas from Russia while they're fighting Russia. It's embarrassing to them, and it was very embarrassing to them when I found out about it, I can tell you that. But they have to immediately cease all energy purchases from Russia. Otherwise, we're all wasting a lot of time.
For more on this, I'm joined from New York now by John Cavalage, Senior Editor for Outcome and Modelling Analysis at Issue Insight. John, it's a pleasure to have you on the show. And I know you were at the UN General Assembly today. We just heard from Donald Trump there. He gave a really long, wide-ranging interview. I think it was about 55 minutes long. He called China and India the primary funders of Russia's war machine, as you heard earlier, accusing Europe too of buying Russian energy. Do you think he is correct in his assessment of this situation?
If I may first address your 55 minutes, the UN General Assembly guidelines for head of state and head of government remarks during the High Leaders Week is 15 minutes. And on the podium is three little lights, green, yellow, and red. In the case of President Trump, they just burned out. He blew right through them. And that pretty much sums up how he looks at anything, which is guidelines don't matter. And it's whatever he wants becomes the norm. And whatever rules he implements become the rules for everyone. And so that's sort of what we've seen. His the remarks themselves, I think most of the members sitting there, the 100 represented 193, they probably just got out calculators or got out their little smartphones, and they're probably looking how many days left. And if they did that, they'll find out 1,462 days. So I think that's how they listened to everything he said, and he criticized everyone. If I may, particularly on Ukraine, it was interesting where he says, okay, European Union particularly, you're buying energy from Russia, therefore you're helping fuel the war. What he didn't mention nor did Secretary of State Marco Rubio in an interview this morning mention, was that the U.S. is purchasing $3 billion plus annually in energy products from Russia. But the reason that President Trump nor Secretary Rubio mentioned that is because from their standpoint, the U.S. isn't at war with Russia. It's Europe that's at war with Russia. And that's a really interesting distinction on how he sort of separates the two.
And also, President Donald Trump said he's going to discuss Russian energy purchases with European nations today. And the big question here is, will this make any difference? Will Donald Trump then choose to sanction Russia? John, we've spoken about before, he's threatened, he's never come through with it. And if we look at the war between Russia and Ukraine, the talks seem to have stalled.
Yes, to your first question, he will probably be able to walk away with a Trumpian win during the discussions, EU discussions and the others. And he basically looks at everything from his first term with NATO, when he said, hey, you people, NATO members, that point, 30 of you, you need to step up and spend the 2% that you committed to. And during his first term, and then through Biden's term, the members did step up. He then said, okay, now you got to spend 5%. Now, very few of them are ever going to get near that for domestic political reasons. But he was able to say, see, I pushed them along to do something they didn't want to do. But see, now they didn't want to do it, but now it's good that they've done it. So he's going to probably walk away as Ursula von der Leyen, the president of the European Commission, the administrative arm of the European Union. She's already said, okay, we're going to try to move that 2027 mark to end our purchases of Russian energy to maybe end of 2026. So he's really going to be able to say, okay, if you're serious, you need to do this. The question, though, is going to be, is the European Union going to turn around and say, if we're doing this, then you need to find another source for your uranium and some of the other products that you're purchasing from the Russian Federation. That's going to be a delicate diplomatic balance.
And let's talk a little bit about what Donald Trump said about the UN itself in a speech today, which I actually thought was really interesting because it was before the members of the global body. But he did say that it's empty words and empty words don't solve wars. He said basically the UN hasn't helped him end any of the wars that he's ended, all 7 of them. And John, I keep on hearing the questions, is the UN becoming increasingly irrelevant?
It is irrelevant. And President Trump is right to mention that. That theme, President Erdogan of Turkey has, since the G20 in New Delhi in 2023, has been using this phrase, the world is larger than 5, meaning the 5 permanent members of the UN Security Council. To put that sort of in statistical perspective, you have 193 members of the UN. You have 5 permanent members. You have then the remaining of the General Assembly. So you have 97.4% of the UN membership is hostage to the decisions of about 2.5%. And until that swaps, where the majority rules, you continue to have the UN just be a talk fest. And looking at, let's say, Gaza, looking at Israel, for example, almost every speaker condemning Israel, praising the Palestinians, recognizing Palestinian statehood, saying that the Gazan people are being treated poorly. Everybody's flapping their gums about it. But when the majority decided on Sunday, the U.S. would not give visas to President Abbas of the Palestinian Authority to come to the UN General Assembly and give his speech. The UN General Assembly voted to let him make his remarks by pre-taped video. The U.S. and Israel and 8 others opposed it, but the majority carried the day. And the same goes now with Israel. If these members want to put teeth into the UN about anything, then it would seem that if you're accusing a member of being responsible for destroying 90% of the infrastructure and structures in Gaza, killing 65,000 plus, we don't know how many more are buried under rubble, in 23 months, then you would think someone would raise their hand and go, excuse me, why don't we suspend or expel Israel? Let's take a vote. And if the UN Security Council, the US votes no, who cares? We're going to send a locksmith to their offices. We're going to change the locks. We'll decode their entry cards to get into the UN. That takes 30 minutes. And now we've actually done something. But until they actually do something, President Trump's right, President Erdogan's right, others are right. If I may end with this, though, it was interesting to watch after President Trump left, he encountered, or he mentioned about encountering President Lula in the hallway before he came out. But after he left, he had a bilateral with Carlos Gutierrez, the Secretary General, after he had just laid into the UN. And if you listen or you read his quotes, I like the UN, always wanted to be friendly with the UN, want to work with the UN's very important. I'm 100% support of the UN. So, your head's spinning around.
And John, just before I do let you go, I just want to ask what your reaction was to some of the things that Donald Trump did say today. He said European countries going to hell because of migration. He also dismissed the climate change crisis as the greatest con job. He said the UN has given him a broken escalator and a broken teleprompter. Do you think the world will react to this as it's just the Trump playbook and no one's really going to be surprised?
On the escalator and the teleprompter, I think they're all saying to themselves, this is karma. If any of the people attending the UN needed a reason to say, I am so happy I was here today, it was broken escalator, broken teleprompter. Now, that was the good news. The bad news is then he started to read. He doesn't like to read. So then he started to riff, and we're into about an hour. His comments, China doesn't do anything with wind energy, where they're one of the largest users, or the offsets or fraud and all this sort of stuff. This is where Donald Trump has this relevance, and that is, you look back at 2016 in his campaign in this first term, he would say outrageous things, but within the outrageousness, there's usually something that people will say, yeah, that makes sense. I just wish he would then shut up after he says that. And now he talks about immigration. Most countries agree that borders need to be strong, that illegal immigration is bad, but it's just how he then goes and explains it that it goes a tipping point. And this is part of where he says the UN isn't working. They'll agree with him. On climate issues, climate change is expensive to handle. It's expensive to deal with. And so he raises some of these questions where parts of them make real sense. It's then when he starts going in, yes, immigration, we need to control our borders. And then he'll go in and define immigrants as, terrible and dirty and everything else. So he tips it over. And that's the challenge for these people, is pulling apart some of what he says, which makes sense to most members, and discarding the stuff that, this is Mr. Chaos, Mr. Wacko, and Mr. Just Nut Job, and you want to just go and wash your hands when he's done.
Can I tell you something, John? I think he did a really good job without teleprompter. I don't think I could have done that if my teleprompter broke. And also, Donald Trump, always a little bit of showbiz sparkle. John Cavalage, thank you so much for joining us. A reminder of our top stories. Trump lashes out at the UN General Assembly, claiming he ended 7 wars while questioning its role in world affairs. Meanwhile, Saudi Arabia and Pakistan strike a historic defense deal, with Pakistan hinting its nuclear arsenal could extend to Riyadh. And Trump slams Europe for buying Russian energy and warns the US may hit Russia with new tariffs. And that's all from us on W News. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel and, of course, follow us on X. The rail deal is coming up next. Plus, of course, we'll be back in a couple of hours with W News Extra. Goodbye and thank you for joining us.